Imagine that one day your doorbell rings. You open the door, and standing there is you. The same face, the same voice, the same eyes. Every detail matches. For a moment, you think you are looking into a mirror. That person looks exactly like you. But it's not your twin, it's your clone. It sounds like science fiction, like the plot of a movie or a TV show. Something that belongs in a story, not in real life. But in reality, we are much closer to this idea than most people realize. Cloning is not a new or theoretical concept. Even today, scientists routinely clone cells, tissues, and even some animals. You may remember the famous sheep, Dolly, the first mammal ever cloned from an adult cell. She was born in 1996. That means humanity has had cloning technology for almost 30 years. Since then, we have moved much further. Today, we can grow organs in laboratories. We can grow skin. We can repair parts of the human body. And we can work with DNA with a level of precision that would have looked like magic just a few decades ago. Scientists can clone animals. They can copy genetic information. They can create biological copies of life. There is only one thing they officially do not do. They do not clone humans, not because it is completely impossible, but because it is forbidden, and that is a very important difference. If you think about it, cloning a human being is not, from a technical point of view, that far from what we already know how to do. The human body is just an extremely complex biological machine, a machine whose instruction manual is written in DNA. And today, we already know how to read that manual, and in many ways, how to edit it. So the real question is not, will it ever be possible? The real question is, what happens when someone finally does it? But first, we need to clarify one very important thing. A clone is not the same as you. A clone is not a copy of your consciousness. It does not have your memories. It does not have your experiences. It does not have your childhood, your mistakes, or your fears. It only has the same genetic code, the same body in its default settings. It is more like an identical twin, born later. If you cloned yourself today, a second you would not appear. A new person would be born, a person who only shares your DNA. And yet, they would look exactly like you, the same face, the same voice, the same body. And now imagine that such a clone is standing in front of you. Who is the original? And who is just the copy? This is not just a philosophical question. This is a problem that would shake the entire society. Because the moment you can create genetic copies of people, our understanding of life, identity, and death completely changes. Suddenly, death might not have to be the end. Imagine that wealthy people begin creating clones of themselves as a kind of biological backup. When their heart fails, they get a new one. When their liver fails, they get a new one. And somewhere in the background, their own copy is growing, a spare body, a spare life. It sounds like immortality. But is it really immortality? Or just a perfect illusion? Because even if you create a clone, wouldn't you still die? And somewhere else, someone else would simply be born. Someone who only looks like you. And now an even darker thought. What if clones were not created in order to live, but in order to be used as a source of organs, as spare parts, as biological material? Would such a clone be a human being or just a thing? And this is exactly where we begin to cross into a world that starts to look dangerously like a dystopian movie. A world where life can be copied, a world where people can be manufactured, a world where the value of a human being is no longer self-evident. And this is only the beginning. Imagine that human cloning suddenly becomes legal, or at least tolerated. At first, it would be rare, extremely expensive, available only to a few chosen ones, to the rich, to the powerful, to those who can afford to buy themselves a future. At first, it would all sound innocent. It is only for medical purposes. It is only for research. It is only to save lives. And maybe at the beginning, that would even be true. People would start by cloning individual organs, replacement hearts, replacement kidneys, replacement livers. Waiting lists for transplants would disappear. Medicine would take a leap forward unlike anything we have ever seen. But then, the next step would come. Why grow only organs when you can grow an entire body? Suddenly, there would be people who have their own biological copy stored somewhere in a secret clinic. Younger, healthier, ready, a backup. And in that moment, the meaning of death itself would begin to change. Because death would no longer be final. It would become a technical problem, and society would not start changing only in hospitals. It would begin to change everywhere. A new class of people would emerge. People who have clones and people who do not. Two versions of humanity living side by side. For the rich, the body would become something that can be repaired, something that can be maintained, something that can be fixed again and again. For the poor, nothing would change. They would still age, they would still get sick, and they would still die, just as people always have. Inequality would no longer be only economic, it would become biological. And now imagine that cloning would not be used only by medicine, but also by states, armies, intelligence agencies. What is more valuable than a perfectly trained soldier? A soldier you can recreate, the same body, the same genetics, the same physical potential, and maybe one day, even the same personality uploaded into a new body. Wars would change. The value of human life would change. Because a soldier you can replace stops being irreplaceable. And now an even darker thought. What if people started cloning their loved ones? A child who died in an accident, a partner you lost, someone you simply cannot let go. Technically, it would be possible, but would it still be the same person? Or just someone who looks the same? Imagine parents raising a clone of their dead child, and deep down, expecting it to be the same, to behave the same, to fill the same empty space. But it never can, because it is not that person, and it never will be. And then there is another possibility, one that is almost never talked about. What if people start cloning themselves? Not as a replacement, but as a tool, as a workforce, as someone who works for them, risks for them, sacrifices themselves for them. If a clone looks like you, but does not have your status, your money, your rights, then what is it? Your property, your slave, or an independent human being? At that point, the world would no longer be divided only into rich and poor. It would be divided into originals and copies. And the question is not if this would happen. The real question is how long it would take before it all goes wrong. Because history teaches us one thing. When humanity gains power over life, it never uses it carefully. And now we arrive at the most important question of all. If you had your own clone created, which one of you would truly be you? You who was born first, or the other one, who has the same body, the same brain, the same potential? What actually makes a human being a human being? Is it the body, the memories, or consciousness itself? Because a clone has a brain, it has emotions, it can feel pain, joy, fear. It experiences the world in the same way you do, and at some point it becomes aware that it exists. And in that moment, it is no longer a thing, it is a being, but a being that knows it was created as a copy, that its existence is not an accident, that it was manufactured. Can you imagine what it is like to live knowing that somewhere in the world there is your original, someone who has more right to your life than you do? And now imagine an even darker scenario. What if one day we learn to copy not only the body, but also the human mind, memories, personality, the entire consciousness? What if yourself could be uploaded into a new body? Would that mean you continue to live? Or would you still die? And somewhere else, a perfect copy would continue, believing it is you? Because from your point of view, you would still stop existing, and that is a terrifying thought. Maybe cloning is not a path to immortality. Maybe it is just a way to create the illusion that we have cheated death. And now let's return to the very beginning. Imagine standing face to face with your own clone. It looks at you, you look at it, and both of you know that one of you is extra. Who should have the right to live? You because you were first, or them because they are no less real than you? And what if they are younger, healthier, stronger? Would the world prefer them over you? Maybe the most frightening thing about cloning is not the technology itself. Maybe it is what it would do to us, to our sense of the value of life, to our sense of uniqueness, to our sense of who we really are. Because a world where people can be copied is a world where no one is truly irreplaceable. And maybe that is the line we should never cross. Not because it is impossible, but because once we do, there may be no way back. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Many more questions about the future of technology, the world, and ourselves are still ahead. Thank you for watching.